Right, yeah, exactly. Yeah, so this too.
Yeah.
Yep. All right, so we are on now, and I am John Thane. I'm with the TV Quarterly Flip Contest, and I'm here with David Larson, the East Top Photographer of the Year in 2013. Hey, David, how are you?
Good, John. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, obviously, you had a great year in 2013. You had a long list of great winning stories, and we can talk about one kind of in particular that stood out to me. It was a spot news story that you did called "They Say It's a Flood." And tell me a little bit about how this one came about. You came up to the scene, or how did this story happen?
Yeah. Well, Kathleen Cairns, a reporter at BFF, and I were actually on a completely different story, and we were trying to work through tracking that out. And as some stories do, it wasn't really panning out. And so this was kind of in the middle of our afternoon when we'd gotten reports of flooding down at the courthouse, which is a little unusual. You don't hear it very often. So we obviously chose to go check it out and headed down there. And as you kind of are driving down as a photographer, I think as anybody in this business, your mind starts racing. Like, I'm expecting water pouring out and, like, you know, kind of some pandemonium. And when we showed up, it definitely wasn't that. There was water. I think there was like one fire truck. But it doesn't change the fact that hundreds of people were totally misplaced, and their day was totally changed by the fact that they can no longer go about their business. So we set into motion going about trying to find just good characters to kind of tell that aspect, you know, how much of an irritation this was and an inconvenience for people, you know, a lot of whom have to take buses and public transportation just to get down there, only to find that the reason they were there and we lucked out. We found a really good character that we could kind of wrap the story around, who was really great to talk to, and then we just kind of tried to set the scene and what it was like. So.
Yeah, and I like the way you shot a lot of these interviews. I mean, it seemed like you were tight, shooting telephoto, kind of far away. I assume you had your reporter kind of close by talking to the person. Is that kind of a typical style that you use? Why did you choose to do that for that one?
Yeah, Kath is really great with making sure she's working the wireless mic. You know, when we show up on scene, I make it a point to kind of hand her my wireless microphone and kind of say, go fit, you know, go find somebody. And I think really one of the best ways to get sound from people is to kind of take a step back and put a little distance between them and your camera, because regardless of what we try to do, I mean, our very presence changes the way people act and explain things. So I feel the more distance that I can put between myself, my camera, and the person we're interviewing, the little more relaxed they can get. They can actually fall into a conversation with the reporter as opposed to feel like they're getting just grilled. And so, yeah, I do try to do that. And Kath is really good about kind of understanding that, look, you know, put the mic on them, and I'm going to go kind of try to find a hiding place and some distance. So.
Yeah, what I love about the story is that it could have been a pretty boring story. Just there wasn't, like you said, a lot of fire trucks or anything kind of excitement happening. But the characters sucked me in. I mean, it felt very natural, and I felt like I was really sucked into the story.
Yeah, I think that when you're in news long enough, I think you start seeing a lot of repetition. And so while the facts about a news piece can change, but you kind of feel like you start covering the same things over and over again. What is constantly changing and evolving is characters. And so by kind of trying to find those unique characters and making them a focus point in your story, you're going to start creating a larger interest, and I think a connection with the people who are watching. You know, they can identify with people who are like, I came down to this courthouse because I needed to take care of X, Y, and Z, and now I can't, and so that has thrown off my entire day. I mean, everybody's been put out. So finding those great characters to help tell the news is, I think, paramount. I mean, you have to have them. So.
Yeah, and you also captured a nice moment at the end of the piece where somebody from the courthouse came out and was like telling people what's up, and you were right there to get that, but then also the guy's reaction, your main character's reaction, as he was like, oh, I guess this is what's going on now.
Yeah, that's, I mean, I think that's something that people preach in a lot of conferences that you go to. I mean, Darren would always tell me that, Stan Heiss would tell me that. And it's action reaction, right? Something happens, get the reaction, you know, because that reaction is what's going to add validity to the actual action, you know. So when the guy came out and was like, gather around everybody, here's what's going on, and here's how we, you know, are going to fix it, your next thing is like, what do you think about this? How has this affected you? And, you know, is this going to make things okay? So it's all about, you know, if something happens, make sure you get that reaction. And so it's something that's always going through my mind, especially that's actions, those spontaneous moments are the things that you can't predict. But you can control your next steps after that, you know. So that's just what I try to do. So.
Yeah, no, that was great. I mean, how long had you been involved in the NPPA and the quarterly clip contest until this last year?
Yeah, I've been submitting pretty much my entire career. I remember I feel like everybody kind of has this similar story where you start in this business and then somebody somewhere along the lines handed them a tape or showed them, you know, what is possible, and all of a sudden you were hooked. And that's very similar to me. I was working at WBOC at the time. I wasn't a part of the NPPA, but I remember my chief at the time handed me a tape and said, you know, this were the quarterly winners from last year. This was back when they were still on VHS tapes and they were like mailing them out. Right. And so I think as soon as I went to WHTM, a few months later, they made us join, and I immediately was like, oh, thank goodness, this is like what I've been waiting for. And so it's been kind of ever since. So you know, it's probably like 7 or 8 years that I've been submitting quarterlies.
And I imagine that's had kind of a pretty big effect on your career, it looks like.
Oh yeah, I think it helped guide me and really shaped me too. I mean, that drive to keep improving, to see, you know, not to sound like I was in it for the awards, but it's in a business that sometimes feels thankless. You know, it's really nice to see you rewarded a little bit for your hard work. And so the NPPA quarterlies allowed me to exercise that. And then on top of that it was a fantastic learning tool. I was able to submit and then watch the guys who I idoled and who I had, you know, seen doing great work and learn from them. And I think overall it helps to develop like a really great sense of community. You know people's names who are doing well long before you meet them. I remember like John Kirtley. I'd never met him before, but I had established like, you know, a contact with him just purely out of quarterlies. And then, you know, when I met him one time when we were passing through Asheville, it was like a no-brainer to like look him up. So I think like the quarterlies help to establish like a sense of community between all of us people who share, you know, a common thread. So
yeah. And speaking of learning tool, we've got all of David Larson's stories. We'll be posting them on this article, and there's a ton of great stuff to learn from there. Excellent work in 2013. But you've left TV news now. Tell us a little bit about this new chapter that you're on in your life.
Yeah, I left TV news. Darren Durlack and myself have been working on a business for the last 2 years, a production company, and it finally kind of took off, and we're able to go full time, and it's going really well. You know, overall, we're doing a lot of similar things, a lot of similar ideas that we brought to news. We're bringing to our production, and you know, it's fun. At the end of the day, I just love talking with people, being creative, and or at least trying to be creative, and kind of just seeing where I can take my photography, and this offers me another outlet, just like news gave me an outlet. So.
Sure, and I imagine a lot of the storytelling principles that you worked on and learned in TV news apply to, you know, the short form commercial work too.
100%. I mean, at the end of the day, you see it all the time. I mean, everybody's trying to tell a really great story, and in whether it's a short amount of time, like 15, 30 seconds, or 3 to 5 minutes, I mean, PR can still be there. You can still capture really great emotion and show, you know, some really great things. So
that's awesome. David, thank you so much for joining me tonight.
yeah, thanks for having me, John. Appreciate it.
You bet.